Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning again. Thanks for tuning us in. This is Aaron Bloxel with Matthew Balzer. This is B&B Hockey Talk. Thanks for joining us, whether you're joining us on Facebook or on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and leave your comments below. We'd love to hear from you. So today, we continue our 31 teams in 31 days through the summer here with the Pittsburgh Penguins. As their announcer likes to say, hey, man, this team, as always, is loaded. I really like the depth that they have going into this season compared to the last season, especially at the back end. But why don't you start us off with the forwards and break us through this crazy talent that they have and what's going on? What do their lines look like?
All right, yeah. So this is one of the most loaded forward groups in the NHL. The top line I have is Jake Gensel, Sidney Crosby, and Patrick Hornquist. But their right side, which is totally loaded, these guys can move up and down as they do it. But yeah, Sidney Crosby, arguably the best player in the NHL, depending on who you like more, him or McDavid. I still think Crosby is the best player in the NHL. Hands down. But yeah, he had 89 points in 82 games. Jake Gensel had a pretty good sophomore year, had 48 points. But in the playoffs, once again, just took it to a whole nother level. Before he got eliminated, he had 10 goals, 21 points in only 12 games. And that matches a little of the playoff prior to where they won the Stanley Cup, where he had 13 goals and 21 points in 25 games. So less than half of those games to match that production. And Hornquist, well, he'll be his pesky self in front of the net. And the second line I have is Carl Hagelin, Evgeny Malkin, and Phil Kessel. Phil Kessel had a career year for the Penguins. He had 92 points in 82 games. And Malkin, who I actually still prefer over Crosby to watch, had 98 points in 78 games. So if he had missed a couple of those games, he would have had over 100 points. Hagelin will be intriguing to see if they do stick him in on that second line, because I know O'Sullivan didn't like him as much as last year. He was in and out of the lineup a little bit, and then in the playoffs he finally got back in. The third line I have is Riley Sheahan, Derek Brassard, and Brian Rust. Rust can move up in the lineup into that top six. He played a little bit with Gensel and Crosby on that top line. And he just got a new contract, but he had 38 points in only 69 games last year. Derek Brassard was their big trade deadline acquisition. He had 21 goals and 46 points. And will really solidify their center depth. And maybe you just never know, they could put Crosby and Malkin together at certain times with the amount of depth, because Riley Sheahan is a natural center, and they could move him over if they want to move Brassard up and really mix up their lines. The fourth line I have is Abbotsford native Derek Grant, who just recently signed with the Penguins. Old timer Matt Cullen returns back to the Penguins after 1 year away with the Minnesota Wild.
Love the old timers.
Yeah. And another free agent signing, Jimmy Hayes, over from now I'm blanking, the New Jersey Devils from last year. He big power forward. I think he's like 6'5", brother of Kevin Hayes with the New York Rangers. Should solidify that fourth line. But yeah, with Cullen and Grant, both centers as well. So Rutherford has done like a really good job of solidifying down that center depth with potential injuries going along in the season. And for extra forwards, there's going to be a couple younger guys that will be looking to push into the lineup. Zach Aston-Reese, who had a really good year in the American League, had 29 points in 41 games before he got called up. Got about 6 points in 16 games, and then was a full-time spot with the Penguins in the playoffs before Tom Wilson ended his playoffs with a broken jaw, which I still thought was a clean hit, but that's another whole discussion. And Dominique Simone is another guy that will be pushing. He started off playing 21 games in the American League, but had 17 points, so got the call up and ended up having a decent year with the Penguins, getting 12 points in 33 games. So both of those guys are fringe players that will be pushing for spots up front. And along with these forwards, the Penguins had the best power play in the NHL. When you can have a first unit with Malkin, Crosby, Kessel, Letang, and Hornquist, it pretty well sets up a 26.2% clip for their power play, which is just unbelievable.
Well, and before we went on air, we talked about how Gensel had such a crazy amount of points in the few playoff games that they played without playing on that first power play unit and playing on their second power play unit, because there's just no room for him on the first power play unit because it's so stacked. Obviously, Crosby on the right, Malkin up top, Kessel on the left, and the Hornquist in front. There's no room for Gensel. Can they find room for this guy? Probably not, because, of course, jumping into defense, Chris Letang, as long as he stays healthy, he'll have another great season. He had over 50 points last year again. This guy, the previous seasons, fought some injuries, struggled to get into the lineup. But last year he was healthy for most of the season, and I'd love to see this guy healthy again because he's a crafty playmaker and, of course, the point of this power play with Evgeny Malkin. And, man, that power play is absolutely sick when they're on. His defense partner, of course, stay-at-home defenseman Brian Dumoulin, really good at holding the fort down when Letang is off the ice. Former first-round draft pick in 2012, Olli Mata, playing with, of course, Justin Schultz, who, again, is an offensive defenseman that they got a few years ago from the Edmonton Oilers. He struggled with injuries last year. Man, if this team can keep Letang and Schultz healthy at the same time, they're going to have offense coming out of their end up to that talented forward group like crazy. And then, of course, they had a big free agent signing in Jack Johnson out of Columbus. He's going to bring some stability to this defense, and I think is the best defense I've seen the Penguins have probably in 3 or 4 years now. Even though they won the Stanley Cup a couple years ago, I think this is a team that's poised to make another deep Stanley Cup run. He's going to be playing with the Olympians' brother, Penny Alexiak's brother, Jamie Alexiak, who's a monster on defense, 6'6". I think he even is listed at 6'7" in some circles. Just an absolute monster on defense. Those 6 defensemen, if healthy for the season, this Penguins team is going to have a heck of a year. I also have 7th defenseman Chad Ruhwedel, who's going to be there if needed and called upon. What do you think about their defense, Matt, and bring us into their goaltending?
Yeah, it was great to see Letang finally stay healthy for an entire year. Unfortunately for my fantasy team, I took Justin Schultz thinking that Letang would get hurt, but it ended up Schultz had more injuries than Letang did. But the crazy thing with Letang will be interesting. He had 222 shots on goal, but he only had 9 goals. So it'll be interesting to see if this year, if his goal production will go up, because it was a bit frustrating getting all those shots on goal, but not seeing many go in. Especially with Schultz being hurt, it'll be interesting to see if his goal production goes up. Olli Mata, as I'll bring up later, is their last first round pick still with the team, and Jack Johnson is an intriguing signing. I don't like the term. I think it's a 5-year deal or something like that, which the money was decent, but 5 years for Jack Johnson, like he'll bring a bit.
His parents needed the money, right?
Yeah.
That's a terrible story all in itself. So.
Yeah. Oh, but yeah, and even Chad Ruhwedel as their 7th defenseman, he actually showed some trust when he was in the lineup with their coaching. 44 games, but he could be switched in and out with Alexiak depending on how their lineup goes.
All right, bring us into their goaltending. In my opinion, hasn't been the same since they lost the Flower Marc-Andre Fleury, right, who put on a great playoff performance last year. And that puts a lot of pressure on Matt Murray to perform. I know he obviously played great in their back-to-back Stanley Cups. But talk about you being the goaltender. Why don't you talk us through their goalies?
Yeah, so Matt Murray really struggled with inconsistent play last year. He went 27, 16, and 3 in 49 games, but he had a goals against average of 2.92 and a save percentage of only .907. So not having a veteran backup behind him. Well, they started off with Antti Niemi, but that went downhill fast. He really struggled with inconsistent play. There won't be a veteran backup again this year. But we'll see if he can get back on his game. I know there was some mental struggle. I believe his dad passed away towards the end of the year, so that's always tough to get over and back on your game when you have to deal with that. But he is one of the best young goalies in the NHL, and I think he will have a bounce back year this year. I'd be looking for 30-plus wins. Their backup position will be a bit of a battle between Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith. Jarry got into 26 games, went 14, 6, and 2. But DeSmith actually played in fewer games, but towards the end of the year actually got the backup position over Jarry. He had 14 games, went 6, 4, and 1, but had a stronger save percentage at .921, and Jarry's was only .908. So it will be interesting to see who potentially comes out. I think Jarry might have a bit of a step above DeSmith maybe to start the year. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
So Matt Murray, as Canuck fans remember, called Brock Besser a fluke after Besser scored, 4 or 5 goals on him in 2 games. That, made me smile a little bit. But Matt Murray's got some incredible size. He's played some incredible playoffs. Hopefully he rounds back into shape and can have a good playoff or regular season going into the playoffs. That's where it was nice to have both him and Fleury because if he went through some struggles, Fleury would be able to step in with that veteran presence. Now, let's talk about some of their prospects. I know you've already mentioned a few. They don't have a lot, and you're going to touch on why. But you've touched on Zach Aston-Reese, Dominic Simone, and Daniel Sprong already. Why don't you, if you need to touch on those guys again, go for it. But talk to the viewers about what we discovered about their first-round draft picks. By the way, you said Olli Maatta is the only first-round draft pick still on their team. Obviously, you misspoke because they got guys like Crosby and Malkin and stuff. Maatta is the last first-round draft pick that they've got on this team that they had, and you'll touch on why. So why don't you bring us into that?
Okay, yeah. So the Pittsburgh Penguins have not had a first-round pick since 2014. And that pick was Kasperi Kapanen, who they traded away for Phil Kessel. But yeah, so that brings it all the way back. I misspoke, sort of as I say, but all the way back to 2012. Olli Maatta and Derek Pouliot were their 2 first-round choices. So Maatta is the last surviving guy, all the way back from 2012. Is their youngest first-round pick still on the team. But that shows that the Penguins have done good in the draft. Still getting some good steals like Jake Gensel and Matt Murray were both third-round picks. Brian Rust, I believe, was a third or second-round pick. So they have done and Brian Dumoulin they got in the Jordan Staal trade, who they took in the first round back there. So they've still done a decent job. But yeah, Daniel Sprong I think will make the team this year. Had an absolutely amazing season in the American League. Had 32 goals, 65 points in 65 games, and got into a handful of games with the Penguins, scoring 2 goals and 3 points in 8 games. This guy could potentially be starring with Sidney Crosby on that top line. But with a lot of righties already with Hornquist, Kessel, and Lundqvist. It'll be interesting to see where they spot him in the lineup, or if they move him over onto the left side. But other than that, they have like a couple other prospects. Kalen Addison, who was a second-round pick in this year's draft. Defenseman had 65 points in 68 games and 19 points in 16 playoff games for Lethbridge in the WHL. And I believe he was with Canada at this year's summer camp. So that's another another defenseman in the system. And they signed Juuso Riikola out of the Finnish Elite League, another defenseman, had 24 points in 59 games, and could provide a bit more depth for the Penguins on the back end. But other than that, they don't really have a whole lot, which is crazy to think. But when you're winning Stanley Cups, it doesn't really matter.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, they've got Crosby and Malkin. The window is now. They've got Kessel, right? They got all these players. Why bother keeping all those draft picks? And they keep finding, like you said, these gems like Brian Rust and Jake Gensel, and potentially Aston Reese and Sprong. These guys come into the lineup and are able to make a difference because their play is absolutely elevated by guys like Crosby and Malkin. They get to see how they get trained every single during the off season and during the season, and it definitely rubs off onto the team. But it's incredible that they haven't had a first round pick since 2014. And you look at what their roster looks like, it's still very good. And I think they are poised to have a great season. 100 points last year, only a handful points up. Actually only 3 points up of fifth in their division. We've talked about this in previous episodes of how crazy the Metropolitan Division is. Where do you see them finishing? I have them actually finishing number one in the division. I see about 110, 115 points happening for them. Where do you see them, sir?
Yeah, same here. I see them finishing first. I think Washington will have just a little bit of a regression going through the long playoff run. Usually you get the slow start to start the year, and with the way Ovechkin's still partying, we'll see what shape he's in to start the year. But yeah, I see them in first place. I think a bounce back year for Matt Murray in net, and with all those offensive weapons, it's probably going to be another long playoff run for Pittsburgh this coming year. For sure, absolutely. Thanks again, everybody. We're going to wrap the episode up with that. Our 31 teams in 31 days, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure you give us some love. Hit the like button. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Let people know about us. Love to have more feedback if you want to leave us a comment. But I'm Aaron Bloxel with my co-host, Matthew Balzer. We're here 5 days a week bringing you B&B Hockey Talk. Thanks again for watching, and have a great weekend, everyone. We'll be back here next Monday.